So it's been great to hear the speakers this morning, and I just wanted to say just a few words before we start about maybe just 3 or 4 lessons, right, that we had from seeing these sort of hundreds of projects around the world. And one is that actually very many of them have not used open source, but have instead used source available peer production licenses, right? So this means that the code is accessible to others, but they cannot commercially use it unless they are a worker cooperative, for example. Then we've seen like another lesson was that the projects that succeeded really have focused on business, right? I think I mentioned that yesterday, that there has been so much. We've seen it so often over and over again where projects basically got sidetracked because they just focused on the democracy of cooperatives, on writing their bylaws for 2 years, or trying to be particularly radical, or things like that. And we've seen that that has been a problem because there cannot be a democracy if there's no business in the first place. Right? The next thing that we saw was that projects that succeeded have almost always most closely worked with municipalities or states, right? So we've seen this all over the world, which I think that in Kerala you call this the public option. That's what Kerala Savari was framed as. So like really working in close collaboration. There are many more lessons. They are all in my book, so I'm not going to go into this, but we're really happy to have a few more examples here today. I think it's really clear, and I think for those of you who are thinking about starting this, right, that whatever you are starting is not really a project, right? It's not a single business. It's really something you have to think about as a sort of interplay of many different organizations and groups together, right? To work with unions, to think about marketing, to work with the authorities, with the municipalities, to think about how to write legislation that supports what you are doing, to work with the co-op movement, to work with the workers. So it's an ecosystem approach, right? It's never just this isolated project. All right, so going first. I don't have a slide clicker. Do you want to go ahead and? Okay, starting with Heira. Super happy to have Heira here from Indonesia. Been working together for a long time, and it's an amazing example of persistence and in the education space. Yeah.
Okay. Good. I don't know. It's morning or good to going to afternoon. Okay. Thank you. I'm Heira. Just let me say my gratitude for today. I was excited, so I couldn't sleep. And a bit tired today, but it's all right. Okay, MyCool class is not the result, but this is how I work and then learned and then try to apply in our needs to how to provide the online teachers the good condition or decent work. So because my husband is an online teacher, so I know how it's struggling with the working condition. Actually, MyCool class was created by the Californian guy, John Hayes, and then he is also the online teacher, and with a vision to provide freelance and independently contractor. And then the big virtual learning during COVID is really hit. So they have a huge amount of money and then a huge amount of profit, but the teachers left behind. So that is the starting we think about how to create the platform, but it's owned by the teachers. All right. Okay, next slide. So what does make our motivated? It's the motivated to create a fair and equitable environment for online education globally. And MyCool class seeks to liberate and unite online teachers through a cooperative movement that enables teachers to have fair and equitable salaries across the world. That is what we motivated on. And then we have maybe the next slide 3. Yes, this is our milestone. This is really fast process how we were from a co-op. So in 2020, during our finished cohort, I was looking what project I want to apply what I have learned about the platform co-op. My first project is not MyCool class, but it's called My UKM. It is for the marketplace for the small and medium enterprise and locally in Indonesia, but it didn't work. It didn't work out at all. And then this is the second time, and it's globally. And then maybe it will be great for us to learn because it's registered in UK. So registered in UK without UK citizen or someone living in UK. So it's all outside the UK. Maybe it can be a nice or great pieces of article if research if you want to research on it. And then on January, we have some consultation with the platform, with the Cooperative UK, and then Principle 6 in UK, and then in March we launch our document, and then in April we legalize our co-op. So it is like less than a year from the planning until we got the legalization of our co-op. But we opened the business in July 2021, and as well, for the first time we have 300 teachers. It's a handful of teachers. And then now down to, we have 280, but people or teachers who online really do online teaching is less than 50. So it is like small numbers. So we had a first AGM into 2021, and also we just got another one. The second one is on October 2022. And you know, it is my learning process, my learning curve that something happened during the June and July. So we restructured our co-op, and now we're moving in migration from what Trebor said is already the LMS we rent from the company, and now we move to VMA. This is the worker co-op from UK, and the co-op exchange who help us to strive, and then we can call it save us from the bleeding money. And okay, we have the slide 4, please. I'm going too fast. Okay, then to talk about the student, we have around 400 students, and then now the lesson taught more than 1,400 hours. And then the offered subjects, 17, and languages offered, it's like around 8. And average price for lessons is around 15 pounds. So it's better. The challenge, what is the challenge? The member engagement is the first thing first. I bring it up what the big problem. And then so participation, and then leadership transition after the we call it a storm in our co-op, and then financial sustainability and also technology. So I really eager to get another co-op to chip in and then try to get them working with us with their technology. And then as well, we have to get the strategy how to overcome our problem. Like now, I put this education and training the first thing first. We believe that with training and educate them or member and we can get more participation from them. And then leadership development, technology integration. I agree with we pay a lot of, not a lot of money, but we pay Stripe because we use the payment gateway, and maybe in the next future we will have the cooperative payment gateway. We will have a cloud co-op, so we can store our data in that storage. Thank you very much. And I really love to be here. Thank you.
All right, so next we talk about, NeedsMap. So Mehmet and Itir will present together. Yeah, so you have an hour. Yeah.
Thank you. I am Mehmet from NeedsMap, Turkey. 3 million Mehmet live in Turkey. So we can found a new cooperative, Mehmet's cooperative, with 3 million members. And also my colleague Itir. We came from NeedsMap in Turkey. We will tell about NeedsMap, but mainly we will tell you the last 1 year in earthquake, what will we do, what we did. And now I start. And the NeedsMap system, we are a platform cooperative and working with the map-based platform. And the people in need and the supporters enter the system. We match each other, like in this Turkish map. But in the disaster times, 11 cities affected, and the 3 of them most affected. We worked mainly on these cities, and the supporters from the other cities sent to what they need. And in these main 3 cities, they entered the system, victims entered the system, what they need. And this is a huge organization. We have 130,000 members, and more than 8 million visitors in the system. And also, it's since the 8 years, we create $150 million equivalent sharing economy.
Okay, so when the earthquake hit, as with other disasters, our field team immediately went to the field trying to find out about the needs in the place. But also we have teams like engineers who actually immediately started working on technological needs which arose during this specific earthquake. So we created a damage assessment form, immediately activated it. We created an earthquake map, estimated damage building map, and as well as a volunteer map. So simultaneously, not everyone was in the field, so some of us were in big cities which are not affected, like Izmir and Istanbul. We tried to create new technologies and try to bring together supporters from all around the globe with the people in need.
I was in the earthquake cities when the disaster happened. And firstly, the first effect, I went to the center of the earthquake, but we see some hours later, 3 cities affected mostly, and we set system here, and the United Nations Development Program was on the field with OCHO. So we worked together as a partner on this field. We made some meetings with the local actors and the communities, with the INGOs, international organizations, UN agencies. We match each them with the local communities.
So simultaneously, because we were receiving so many needs, as you can imagine, with hundreds of thousands of people affected, so we created a WhatsApp chatbot. So the people in need were immediately entering the needs, and then it would just appear on our system, and we would deliver the need to the particular person as fast as we could. So you could ask, how were you able to spread the word? We used all our social media platforms, as well as all our partner organizations also shared this number. Also, we had hundreds of people in the field, so they personally took the number to everyone affected and said, you have to enter the need here. For those who did not have access to phones, or whose phones were destroyed during the earthquake, the volunteers helped out, so they didn't have access to their phones, but they could reach us in the main warehouses. And then we also worked with volunteers to enter them to the system and deliver the needs.
Yeah, in this system, we have some applications. It's 80,000 from the victims, and we delivered 25,000 of them. But we managed the biggest warehouse in this region with the other NGOs. We now human aid organizations are managing by the governmental organization, but we were there near it, together working on the field, try to solve this problem.
So, as you can imagine, there are phases of earthquake response or disaster response, so first aid, and then like humanitarian aid, and then recovery and redevelopment. So we built mainly two redevelopment centers, RRDCs, in the region where it was less affected. So we will target these cities who are mostly affected, the people. We created also an employment map. And then the last slide, please.
In the last slide, in these three cities, we made container city for the families, and the community center and the child-friendly areas. Not only work on human aid, and also for their life, building their social life capacity, and some areas for the children. This is the examples of them. We are still there. Recovery is still going. Maybe 5 years ago, for 5 years later, it will finish. I don't know, because it's very slowly. Thank you.
So thank you. If anyone is interested in the technology we use or anything else, we're more than happy to share the experience and the technology. So thank you.
MyCool class, which focuses on online language instruction, right? And NeedsMap, which essentially allows groups to map particular needs to an online map, where they can then be supported by others in the ecosystem. We are now stepping forward to Udayan, who has a very impressive project in San Diego in California.
Hi, I'm Udayan. I'm a PhD student at the University of California, San Diego Design Lab. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about our project with the United Taxi Cooperative and United Taxi Workers of San Diego. Right, next slide. Yeah, so just to begin and introduce United Taxi Workers of San Diego, they are a taxi union led by taxi workers who are primarily refugee immigrant workers in San Diego. They started off from a taxi strike in 2009, where they were protesting worker conditions, like bad worker conditions for taxi workers in San Diego. And since then, they've consistently driven policy change in San Diego to increase taxi worker agency in the taxi industry, and really focusing on what lets taxi workers do the kind of work they want to do. as they were focusing on this work, doing these policy changes, and once they won a really major significant policy change victory, which allowed taxi workers to effectively choose which cab company they drove for, was the same time around which Uber and Lyft took off in San Diego, thus taking the business away from the taxi industry to Uber and Lyft. And so their role had to change. They had to adapt to building the business back into the taxi industry where drivers have more control than they have in Uber and Lyft. And that's where our partnership started with them, which is now a 4-year ongoing collaboration with the Just Transitions Initiative at UCSD with UDWSD. Next slide, please. All right, so our work started, of course, focusing with driver workshops. We had driver workshops where one thing became very clear. How Uber and Lyft and taxis differed in San Diego was deeply historically and contextually rooted. While Uber and Lyft are very minimally regulated at the state and national level in the US, taxis have been historically regulated at the city level, where drivers have been able to precisely negotiate their working conditions in their own city. And so our focus with building our vision was very much how we can counterpose our vision to what Uber and Lyft do. So Uber and Lyft focus on building a scalable platform and then applying that to many places, whereas our vision focused more on creating a bespoke solution for San Diego, where taxi workers would have more agency, where the platform would serve more specific city needs. Next slide. Okay, so through this sort of broad focus, our platform cooperative vision crystallized. So we started by promoting this idea that taxis, because they're regulated at the city level, should also be integrated properly in the city public transportation system. We said that this should happen through a democratically led cooperative that is able to negotiate with the city on what the working conditions should be. And we said that it should be facilitated by an app platform that follows city taxi regulations, which specifically means that the city sets the rates of the platform, not an arbitrary demand-supply algorithm. The interface of the platform is abiding by city regulations such that there is transparency between workers, customers, and the platform. And then the data ownership should be used as not to promote precise privatized data advertising, but rather to promote aggregated data that can help the city improve their transportation systems. So this was our broad vision, and we've been working on this in collaboration with city authorities, local community organizations, building investment into it. And it has, of course, had to adapt. This is our utopian vision, but next slide, please. This is where we are today. So sort of I hear shared language developing. So we call this vision amongst ourselves the public option. It comes from this history in California where a lot of people have been trying to develop a public option for healthcare. And we were this could be the public option for on-demand transportation in San Diego and then beyond. So it includes 3 elements, as I described. First, let me talk about where the development of the taxi driver cooperative is at. So we engaged through a state-funded grant in an intense development workshop where we had driver leaders in the industry engage in building up the bylaws of the cooperative, developing what should be the democratic participation structures. And after setting up the cooperative, we actually came to the same realization as Trebor described is, okay, we have a basic structure of the cooperative set up, but we now need to focus really on how do we get business back to the taxi industry. And so since then, we shifted the driver leaders' focus to actually going to different organizations and promoting this vision and asking for business and saying why this vision is worth investing in. In parallel, in parallel, we also started working on the app platform. We had to go through many technological contractors. We tried getting the city to fund the development, but that was a political vision too far for the city, at least for now. So we focused on procuring a tech contractor that would build the drivers into the development process, and in their final contract would actually give drivers agency over deciding very specifically the pay structures of the platform and the design of the platform. And then finally, this is, oh, sorry. And then finally, this is what's like make or break for our vision, which is finding a pilot contract with the city. Now, we realized pretty early on, we couldn't compete with Uber and Lyft on pricing. If we did that, we would be undercutting ourselves out of the business. So we focused on building collaborations with city institutions to find a contract that would be able to prioritize paying drivers fairly while providing customers the rights they need. And towards that, we've actually been able to finally find a city call-it system that's willing to give us our first pilot contract. And now, next slide. So just in conclusion, where we are right now, this is our app. Ride United is our brand that we're promoting. We recently had a big pre-launch meeting with drivers. There are 30 drivers onboarded onto the platform. On December 16th, we're having a big launch event where we're going to invite like, all city officials, stakeholders, community organizations to come meet at the place where the taxi drivers struck for the first time in 2009 and introduce this platform to them. And then after that, we plan to go to business, start the city contract in January, and hopefully share this platform beyond San Diego with other taxi unions in the country.
I'm Adi. I teach at IIT Delhi, and I studied an organization called Graamvani. And with a lot of collaborators, and some of whom are in the room also, we're trying to reconceptualize some of the work that we've been doing, or rather re-articulate also. Yeah, all right. So we call this the core stack, commoning for resilience and equality. And basically the idea has been that, so we're actually very new to cooperatives as such. We've been working at the construct more at a community level or a landscape level. That how do we build technologies or platforms, and that's why we call it community-based. So which means a couple of things for us, that what the purpose of the platform is, that has to be defined by the community itself, rather than entrepreneurs or other external stakeholders building something which they feel are important problems to solve for the community. Rather, the needs should come from the people themselves. So there's this participatory design element over here. The second part is that the technologies the community should be able to manage them themselves. And that becomes very important because then it also builds the capacity of the communities to understand the technology, and which then carries forward to interactions with other kinds of platforms and technologies as well. So this is slightly different from typically how we see digital public infrastructures or digital public goods being defined, which are more from a service mindset, that it's a service that's being provided to citizens or consumers. Rather, we are saying that the citizens or consumers, right, should be able to govern all of the tools that are being used by them. And underpinning all of this, there needs to be some kind of ethical principles, that something which is universal. And here, something that is very dear to our heart is about equality and access to resources for marginalized groups. So that's sort of been shaping all of our work. And we can go to the next slide, and it's going to be a bit tricky because I had animations and like step-by-step things. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. Yeah, maybe you can try to bring up the whole slide in one go if that's possible. So largely there's three pillars on which we're trying to bring our past work and some of our ongoing work together. That what are some things that communities need, and this is not a complete list, but one aspect has been the key work that we've been anchoring for many years around community-based information systems. So here we work in rural areas, and we gravitated towards voice-based systems because these become accessible even to less literate people. So one of the primary platforms that we use is called IVR, Interactive Voice Response. So this is basically what you get in a call center when you call, and you get an automated voice which asks you, right, press 1 for this, press 2 for this. So we basically innovated on that people, when they call, they can listen to audio messages, and they can record their own audio message. Yeah? And this essentially becomes almost like a social media platform, but in voice, on audio snippets that people are listening of other people, and they're contributing their own thoughts and reflections. And this, so that's one part. The second part is what we're working on now more these days around socio-ecological management. That again, how can we put tools in the hands of the communities through which they can determine how to manage groundwater in a better way, how to manage forests in a better way, yeah? And the third part, which we've barely started, is on market linkages, that how do we then enable these communities also to connect to markets, and that's where there's a bit of a cooperative element that comes in. Very quickly to tell you more about how our voice-based systems work and what kind of use cases they solve for. Social protection or access to government schemes is one vehicle through which resource distribution can be done. And these processes can be broken in many ways. There can be elite capture at the local level. There can just be government apathy by local officials. So here, through this voice-based system that I was talking about, it essentially becomes a mouthpiece for the community that they can call, and they can record problems that they're facing with government schemes. These could be about food subsidy shops not opening on time. They could be about people not getting wages in time. And it's also been used in the worker context where industrial workers call and report these grievances on unfair dismissal from work and so on. And all of these grievances are going on a public platform. And that makes all the difference. So through this, they can also be published on social media. They can also be shared more widely. And this giving a public face to these is what puts more pressure on the authorities to resolve them quickly. But underpinning all of this is our network of volunteers. So in the community itself, the whole platform is anchored by community volunteers who are from the same areas. And they are the ones who also take up these issues to government officials. They make them listen to the problems, get a commitment on resolution. And it is really these volunteers, and all of it works on very cooperative-like principles, where the volunteers come together to solve problems at a massive scale. So for example, in some districts, many of these volunteers have joined together to run district-wide campaigns on things like quality of meals in midday meals that are served in schools, or other similar things on working conditions in factories, for example. And that brings a lot of solidarity, and that's one of the key reasons why many of these we call them volunteer clubs. And many of them have been working on autopilot pretty much with very little guidance or intervention from our side for almost 10 years now. And since we're completely out of time, we'll just flip forward. Now, in a similar way, I was talking about the socio-ecological thing. So here, what we're trying is that the same volunteers can we now give them also tools through which they can manage their local ecology in a better way. So they look complex, and we're working to simplify. But the idea is that things like groundwater, things like surface water, so we're using satellite imagery and machine learning and all of that stuff on top of that so that communities can get a shared understanding of what their resource usage looks like, and they can plan accordingly. One key element also over here is social mapping, where we're trying to get communities to start mapping that marginalized groups like indigenous and tribal communities, how much land do they have, how fertile is that land, what access do they have for water resources as compared to other groups. And if all of this information can be put out in a public format, then we feel that it will start helping to draw attention to areas that have been historically discriminated and pull in more resources to those areas. Yeah. So I won't go further. The third part is basically market linkages, and here this is very nascent work that we started doing with cooperatives. But yeah, just to conclude, the main points that I wanted to make is that these platforms and tools that we're building them in a generic way so that they can be used anywhere, but in a manner that they can be anchored by local communities themselves. So these could be community volunteers, stewards, they could be facilitators of social sector organizations, but who are able to use them themselves and manage them and use these tools to make claim to government resources or to integrate with markets in a better way. Yeah, so I'll stop here.
So I think when I look around the room, it's sort of reminds me, right, of us having started these conferences in 2015, right? So this is the 9th conference, and we, it was the 9th conference of the PCC, and we always did that to bring people together, right, and foster a global ecosystem of people working together. And so you see something that Udayan talked about with this sort of public option, which also resonates here in Kerala, right, with Kerala Zawari and other projects, and which also resonates with the work that we will hear next from Vera Vidal, with, I don't know if she will talk about that, but in France, also being a project.
Profits, gathering researchers and practitioners to facilitate knowledge and build alliances between the commons and the social solidarity economy in France. And how we structure our activity is through working groups, and one of these working groups is about platform cooperatives, the one that is called Plateforme en Commun. That's been, next slide please, operating since 2017. Without slides, it works as well. So Plateforme en Commun tries to, facilitate basically a space for French platform co-ops, but also other stakeholders in the ecosystem to meet, learn from each other, work and experiment together, and trying to foster this principle of cooperation among cooperatives that we've been talking so much since yesterday. We have at the moment around a dozen platform co-ops that kind of belong to this ecosystem with very different characteristics. They can be cooperatives, they can be nonprofits, they can be at ideation stage, they can be already operating, they can be for-profit, non-for-profit. So how do we actually try and have them work together? And this is one of the first things we worked on, next slide please, which was establishing a charter of common principles to understand what is the common ground of these different entities. And we defined collectively 5 principles, pretty much in line with the things that we were seeing yesterday, like a mix between cooperative principles and principles coming from the digital commons. The first idea being inclusive governance. To be part of Plateforme en Commun, but basically it has to be democratic collectives managed by their own members who are very clear about who the stakeholders are, define what the role they have in the governance and decision-making of their platforms, and ensure transparency when it comes to deliberation, decisions, and try to foster horizontal decision-making. The second principle has to do with fair distribution of value and is related directly to also to working conditions. So whether they're non-for-profit or for-profit, the idea is that they find ways of redistributing the value created by the members, by the stakeholders, whether directly to them or towards civil society. And they ensure that there's worker protection, fair wages, and so on. The third principle is data ethics. And this has to do with the fact that basically these platforms have to ensure that they're transparent about how they use the data, make sure that users consent if there's any external use of the data, that they're clear about the goals that are pursued, that they're transparent if there's any price setting mechanisms, and that there's protection for the collective data. The fourth has to do with the production of commons. So whether it's open source or with reciprocity licenses, as Trebor was mentioning, and the last one, cooperation between the members of Plateforme en Commun. Next slide, please. So these are some of the platforms that work with us. As Trebor was citing, MobiCup is probably one of the most successful example at the moment. MobiCup is a French multi-stakeholder cooperative developing a ride-sharing platform. They have currently 32 employees that generate 5 million euros in yearly profits. They have 500,000 users, but only a bit over 1,000 members of the cooperative. And they operate across over 2,600 cities in France. And as their model is, as Trebor was saying, to be able to maintain the ride-sharing platform for free, so it's for free for users, they have a business model where they have their platform as white label for municipalities to be able to share like local ride-sharing communities. Another interesting example of platform co-op that we work with is CupCycle. CupCycle is a federation of bike delivery co-ops. So it's a second level, basically, cooperative. And what's interesting about them is the license they have developed. They have called it the copyleft, to ensure that the companies that are using the platform comply with two principles. The first, that they're using a cooperative model where workers are employees. The second is that it fits with the European Union definition of a social economy actor. So only cooperatives that comply with those principles can use the platform. So what have we done so far with those actors? Last slide, please. So first we started by organizing working groups to have spaces for exchange, especially around the topics of legal structures and governance, business model, interoperability. And we realized that we also needed kind of a yearly forum to gather them, which is actually happening this coming Tuesday. So it's going to be a very packed week for me. Very exciting. And on top of those yearly gatherings, we also have participated actively in action research, producing various reports. One drawing attention to this idea that platform co-ops are territorial infrastructure of cooperation, which is a way of trying to bring on board municipalities to have worked with them. And we have been also actively supporting and participating in a pilot project in the region of northern France, where they got European funding to both develop digital commons, so two platforms, one for bike repairing collectives and the other one for exchange of goods and services. And then they have done a training program for policymakers because they realized they wanted to start already experimenting with policymakers, but they actually needed to really try and convince them for, like, make them understand what this is about and have them, basically train them to get to the experimental stage. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So you saw, just like yesterday, there was like a similar structure here, as Vera already said, right? So yesterday we had Ela Kagel, which represented Platform Corps Germany, and today La Platform de Communs, which is in both cases support organizations for the ecosystem. And they are really, really important, right? So as we think about developing this in Kerala, I think this is also something you might want to further think about, right? How to have genuine co-op development support as well. So there's the practical business side, right? And then there's also the research side, right? So you want to develop those equally, right? Good. I don't know. Do we have time for a question or two? We have 10 minutes. Wonderful. Yeah. Not everybody at once. Ela Kagel, yes.
Yeah, thank you all for your presentations. I have a question for all of you, and that is about the principle of federation that is very often discussed within cooperatives, and that points towards the potential of taking what you have built and putting it elsewhere in other places of the world. And I'm just curious, what role do these thoughts play in your daily lives and work? And have you ever considered creating a blueprint that also others could pick up and establish in their own surroundings?
Yeah, no, I think that's very well put. So I think all of us, and in general with cooperatives, we've been talking about decentralized governance structures. So a federated network is really what makes sense. So even at Graamvani, the volunteer-based system that I was talking about, it's actually a federated network. We have district-wise local instances. So each district has its own set of volunteers and they manage their platforms. But then all these platforms can also share content with each other. I think in terms of challenges, what sometimes has been difficult has been to ensure some common value system across all units so that this common element is preserved everywhere. So that's what we try to do as an organization. But that's one of the other points to also ponder on.
I could add a few words to that. We can create a number of maps for anyone in need. For example, in Istanbul, we created a map for a local municipality, Beşiktaş. So because the mayor said, I want the residents of this particular region to meet the needs of the other residents. So we created a closed map for them. We've done this for alumni of universities, for example, like university alumni meeting the needs of students who are there right now, like any need, like not being able to pay bills to dorm expenses. So we can create these smaller maps for municipalities, schools, companies, if they need. Also, we created a London NeedsMap, working with the municipality. So it's easily scalable everywhere. And Morocco as well. So many. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, about the federation. I have to make a disclaimer. I'm not the tech person. I'm just a user of technology, and then the technology make me my laziness sustainability, of course, because I'm too lazy in the daily life. So technology will help me to do what I should do, and with a better way, of course. And with the new technology we building right now with the VMA cooperative, they said that it's possible to integrate it in another system, and then it's possible to do some federation, like maybe locally in Indonesia, and make a new one to more locally. That what is for the last our last strategies, like how to community building. So every like we have many teachers in Africa, so they may start to do that in the local community. I will start in Indonesia, so with the local teachers and also local students. That's it. Thank you.
So I guess what you see is different scaling strategies, right? So there are distributed platform cooperatives like My Classroom, which are accessible to people all over the world. And we have Santosh Kumar here, who is actually working on finding, thinking about legislation that could enable people to join such cooperatives from all over the world, right? That's one thing. So we have Stocksy United, which is a platform co-op for artists, for photographers and video makers, that has 1,800 members in 67 countries that co-own that platform on stock photography. And there's a co-op cycle, which is a different type of scaling, right? So you had, again, this kind of distributed platform. Then you have federated platforms like co-op cycle, like I mentioned here. And I wish we would be able to show you much more about them, because I think they are important as a model, right? So they have, I don't know how many it is now. It was 80 when I charged. Yeah, about federation of 80 worker cooperatives. But all have to be worker cooperatives, and they're also quite insistent on bicycles and not motorcycles in delivery, right? And then there is replication, where you have something like Up and Go that started in New York City and now replicates in Philadelphia. And you have the Drivers Co-op trying to build this global federation with a social franchise model, right? So I think these models are kind of interesting, and I think, we taught 1,800 students since 2020 about platform cooperatives, and I don't know, dozens of people all wanted to start short-term rental platforms, ride-hailing platforms, and you name it. And we always wanted to scream like, just don't do it, right? Because just don't do it from scratch is the question, right? Don't do it from scratch. Don't just be yet another initiative that looks for 100,000, 200, 300,000, but find the others, and this is what these conferences are for, right? Find the others who work on these things already and build on their efforts, replicate their efforts, replicate, right? Federate, or join these global platform co-ops, distributed platform co-ops. Okay, thank you. Thank you to all the fantastic speakers. Really brilliant.